For being here, Erikka. It's going to be a treat to talk to you for the next 25 minutes. I want you to just go into your story a little bit more of your path into auto retail. From that day sitting in the service shop, how did you get from there to where you are now?
Sure. So I had my daughter at 18. I was a high school dropout. I went and got my GED. I had to work at a daycare because it was literally the only place I could afford. So daycare is $200 a week. I can't afford it. I start working at the daycare. I'm making $6 an hour. And I still remember the day that happened. My alternator goes out, and I'm trying to figure out, it might have been $1,500 or $150. It didn't matter because I didn't have it to get it fixed. And I walk into this Midas repair shop, and he tells me how much it's going to cost, and I break down in tears, and I'm like, there's no way. I said, but listen, I work at a daycare. If there's any way I could bring these parents to your repair shop, and I can get you business. Give me an oil change coupon or something. I'm sure we can figure out. And I just try to figure out a way to be resourceful. And he says, you know what? Let's make a deal. I'll fix your alternator. You bring me business. And that's kind of how it started. 3 years later, he went and opened a repair shop called Napa Auto Center. He asked me to come work for him. I went from $6 an hour to $8 an hour, and I started working service. It was a 3-bay repair shop, and we started selling cars because we got a dealer license. From there, I went and worked at a buy here, pay here dealership, and that kind of is where it started. I had a love for people. I had a passion for changing people's lives. Like, here's the biggest decision that people make is to buy a car, and here I can have an influence on that. And since my previous experience with buying cars and repairing my own car was so bad, I said, how can I make a difference, and how can I do something that's going to be different? I worked at the buy here, pay here for about 3 years, ran a multi-level BDC. Then I went into car buying advice with a guy named Adam Goldfein. He kind of had his own automotive radio show, and we did consumer advice. From there, I got a job at an Audi dealership, stayed there for 7 years, worked at Nissan, and now I found my home in Marion, Illinois, as a sales manager there, and it's been an amazing 20 years.
Was there a moment or two along the way where you realized, this is it. This is where I can make a mark, and this is the industry for me? And describe those if there were moments like that.
It's the first time someone says, wow, you made this experience different. It's the first time someone called you back and says, I want a family member of mine to buy a car from you because this is not like I've ever had an experience in car sales. It's the moment that you hire someone and they said, you changed my life. You made a decision. Every time I see one of my employees, I see myself. I remember being hungry. I remember wanting more. I remember that all the options that I have now are all afforded because someone gave me an opportunity years ago when my resume didn't match, when people wouldn't have hired someone like me. It's interesting now that dealers will look at resumes and say, well, they don't have any sales experience. Well, how are they going to get sales experience? It's up to you to take these people in and give them an opportunity. Are they passionate? Are they hungry? What is it about them that you're really looking for? Sales experience is not necessarily needed. Loving cars is not necessarily needed. I didn't know anything about cars. But the reason I could work at a buy here, pay here, and be able to get people because I had empathy. I had a relationship with the customer because my experience was similar to theirs. So when they talked about bad credit, I understood. I had a 540 credit score at the time, right? Lady, I get what you're feeling. I understand the hesitation. I get why you want to know what your payments are going to be up front. It's funny, people call and say, hey, what's my payment going to be? We didn't even pick the car. Right? What are you talking about, right? But I get it, right? That's that fear that comes from the unknown. And so the empathy there was be able to create a relationship where I would take someone who was scared to death about their situation, come in and help them make one of the biggest decisions that they ever make. Transportation affects everybody. I don't care if you're high income, low income, you got to have a vehicle. You've got to have a way to get from point A to point B, right? It affects your job. It affects your lifestyle. And so to be able to help someone make that decision and be able to help them change the trajectory of their entire life was just absolutely amazing, and it was contagious. And then if I could transfer that over to other people and say, let me show you how I can duplicate this process and you can be a part of it. You can go out there and impact people's lives and change people's lives every single day and get paid to do it. And that's, to me, a perfect job.
It's a long way from the daycare.
I'm still babysitting, so I don't know.
Well, I mean, you bring up, a point, a good point. working at a daycare, it's low wages, you can't afford this repair for your car. And I think there's a lot of people out there who don't realize the opportunities in retail automotive. They don't realize, the kind of income that is possible, and that it's possible without a college degree, which is going to cost them a lot of money to get. What are your thoughts on what the industry can do to get that word out? And is that something that it sounds like maybe you have done with friends and peers out there to get them to consider this industry? Well,
the automotive industry has done a bad job with our reputation, and it's our fault. We are the reason why, right? If we're not giving the customer an experience that they would want to duplicate, why would they want to invite some of their friends and family to work there? I remember talking to a girl, I'm sitting across from her, and she's all excited because she's like, oh, I've never met a woman sales manager before. And so we're talking back and forth, and I said, hey, would you ever consider getting into sales? She was like, I don't know, I could get into sales. I'm like, absolutely. So she calls her mom, and she's like, Mom, you know what? I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about selling cars. Her mom was like, absolutely not. Are you crazy? My daughter is not going to be a salesperson. Are you kidding me? And you look at the real estate industry and it's complete opposite, right? You get a billboard, you have to go pay, get a real estate license just to be able to sell homes. It's a longer process, right? And yet people feel esteemed when they say that they're getting into real estate. They post it all over social media. You say you're going into car sales and people, oh, that's nice, right? Like, it's not the same reverence. It's not the same feeling. So it's going to be up to us to be able to create a consumer experience that says, I enjoyed this so much. It was seamless. How can I do that too? You think about Uber. Uber doesn't have to go out and put a commercial that they're hiring. Someone dropped off food at their house or people took a ride and said, that was pleasant, that was easy, I could see myself doing it, and then they subscribe themselves. They come into the industry on their own because the experience they had in an Uber is like, well, I could do that. I didn't see an issue with that. Automotive has to be the same. We have to be able to create experiences that make people want to be in our shoes. But if it's disjointed, if it's frustrating, if it's long, who wants to do that? And then even bigger than that is, what is the story that you're telling every single day? And this was important to me because I would work 12-hour days, work 6 days a week, and while I was glad I was making money, I'd be burnt out, right? I missed birthday parties, I missed graduations. I was the person who always send money and a gift because I couldn't be there. And my family knew that. So then how am I going to attract people in the industry when they're like, I don't want what you do? Right? I am not interested, because every day we go home and we tell this story about all the times that we're missing out and how hard it is and the struggle, and money can't pay for that, right? The experiences that you missed. And so I decided, I said, you know what? I don't want it anymore. What I want to do is to be able to work at a dealership that has the balance, right? And that has the freedom and the flexibility to offer both. Because I believed that it existed, and I wanted to make sure that if I was recruiting talent, I was going to recruit them into an industry that I actually wanted to work in, right? I can't be sitting here preaching to people to come into an industry and then sit and be like, I told you it was going to be hell, right? Like, I can't. It's got to be unified and jointed enough that they said, you're living and breathing the dream. And so I put a mission to myself to say, how can I make that dream happen?
How readily do you share your own experiences when you meet that customer or you're having that conversation, with a peer about the opportunities that are in retail automotive? I mean, do you lay it all on the table?
Every time, all the time. I'm in Starbucks. I might be in Chipotle. Every time I meet someone that I have a good experience with them, I'm like, you could be in the car business. And they look. And I'm like, you could be in the car business. And I give them my card and I talk to them. We have to sell people on our industry. It's interesting to me that we'll sit across from a candidate, hand them a pen and say, sell me, tell me why you want to be in our industry. Why aren't we selling them on why we want them in our industry? Why aren't we telling them how exciting it is and how wonderful it is and what opportunities that we have? Why do we expect someone who doesn't understand what we do, how it works, to sit across from us and tell us why they want to come into our illustrious industry where they can be a car salesperson? Let's tell them. Let's get excited. Let's tell stories. Talk about the person who started in the BDC that's now a manager. Talk about the detail guy that you promoted up along the way. Talk about the longevity and the stories and the passion of the people in your automotive group. And if you don't have those stories, then shame on you. Because if you don't have stories, why the heck do they want to come work for you? I'm sorry, guys. I've been waiting to get up here for a long time. Somebody tell it like it is.
Yeah, nothing to be sorry about. Those are some wise words. Tell us a little bit about your experience coming up in the industry with dealerships. having or not having diverse staffs with regard to women and also with regard to people of color?
So one of the first dealerships I worked with was the Buy Here, Pay Here. It was actually minority owned. It was Persian men that owned the dealership. There was a lot of brown faces in the dealership. I felt comfortable. And that was important at that time because I was already a woman, but at least I felt like there was people that looked like me at the dealership. So it didn't feel, as disjointed coming in. And so I remember being in there and he said, listen, Erikka, you have every opportunity to be successful. There's no discrimination here. You get out there, you sell cars, you can make as much money as you want to make. The opportunity is yours. You may have to run a little faster, you may have to take off those high heels, you may have to sit by the phone, but you have an opportunity. And I had never been in a job that didn't say you trade hours for dollars, right? JOB, just over broke, right? There was barely any opportunity because you're always at a cap, no matter how hard you work. I could teach those kids in the daycare all their ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. I was still going to make $6 or $7 an hour. It didn't matter how good I was. It didn't matter how I showed up early or stayed late. So you're telling me I can come into an industry and have control over my pay plan, and that, to Damien's point, that there's no ceiling, that it continues to go up, and that the opportunities are there. So for me, it was just an amazing chance to say, hey, look, there's an opportunity for everyone here, and that meant a lot to me, and it meant a lot to the story that I continue to tell.
Did you continue to see that kind of representation as you moved into the franchised dealership side of the business?
Unfortunately not. Luckily, it was a black general manager that hired me and brought me out of the Buy Here, Pay Here industry. Because a lot of times people would look and say, they didn't see themselves when they saw me. They didn't think, she seems like a nice person, but can she sell cars? What's her? Women always feel like they have to prove. With men, they see potential. They look and say, this guy reminds me of my son or my nephew or my cousin or somebody that's they look like me. We can relate. But with me, it was like, tell me your background. What did you do? What have you done? What are your results? So it took someone to say, you know what? I see all past that. I see your passion. I see someone who's coachable and trainable, and I want to give you an opportunity, right? Dealerships have not done a good job of bringing women into the industry, and they definitely haven't done a good job of bringing people of color into the industry. And I think that it's an unconscious bias. It's not a decision that you go in intentionally trying to discriminate. But what happens is we hire people who look like us. We hire people that we're comfortable with. We hear from someone that says, hey, I got someone I want to bring into the industry, and you hire them. He's a good kid. You're going to like him. And you just give him a pass. If someone said he's a good kid, you give him a pass. But when someone who comes who's different, you start to micromanage everything. Oh, they went to college? Well, they probably want a degree in this and that. They'll never stay in the car business. Write them off. Oh, they didn't go to college? Well, they must not be motivated, right? I can't win, right? I bring you someone with experience, they're going to bring all their bad habits. I bring you someone with no experience, they don't have experience. We are fighting a never-ending battle, right? We have to believe that we want people who want to be there. So just the fact that they applied should give you a ring to look a little deeper. And even if you decide you don't want to hire that person, ask them, what was it about my dealership that wanted you to make you want to come here? What was it that attracted you? Because you need to find those points to figure out what you're doing right or doing wrong, right? Was it the pay? Was it because a friend of theirs worked for your company? What is it that attracted them? Because as we continue to attract more talent, because it's only going to get harder. If you think that we're going to sit here and be stagnant, you're losing your mind, right? You've got to open up your eyes that right now we're in a revolution, and there is more demand for good talent all around the country. So we're either going to lose good talent that we already have because we're not retaining them in this industry because we're not making it a great place to work, or we're going to wake up and say, you know what? It's time to get off our laurels. And to Damien's point, let's not get comfortable just because people are making a paycheck right now. Because as things start to change, and if we ever go back to the way things were, then we want to make sure that we have talent that is ready for the revolution that's going to happen into our industry, and that we're able to bring talent in that's not going to go to the big tech companies, that's not going to go work from home, because it's becoming more and more attractive to just stay home. I can make good money making $16, $17 an hour answering a phone, but then we want to bring a porter in and pay $10 an hour and expect them to want to stay. It's time for us to think about our decision-making differently and think if we want to have different people, we're going to have different ideas, and the innovation of our dealerships are going to move even faster because now we're progressive.
Tell us about how the Women of Color Automotive Network came about.
WOCAN started after George Floyd's murder. It was a very depressing time. It was a very hard time. You're sitting in dealerships and there's conversations that are being had that aren't appropriate, right? There's conversations that are to be had from the people who agree, from the people who don't agree, and for the first time, we're talking about race in the dealership. We can't avoid it. It's all over the news. It's everywhere. And I'm sitting listening to conversations, and I'm very uncomfortable because I'm saying, there's people in the dealership that I didn't know had thoughts and feelings the way they did, and it's starting to come out. But again, on the plus side, for the first time ever in automotive, you had people who were standing up and saying, this isn't right. We need to make change. Other industries were starting to come out and talk about race for the first time, and it was intentional conversations about race. So the four of us, four of my dear girlfriends, Carrie Wise, who is a chief marketing officer of AutoFi. This is the first woman that I know that had chief in front of her name. Like, that's a big deal, right? She's also the top 100 leading women. We have Amanda Gordon, who's the first black woman to start a car dealership in Colorado. And then we had Patrice Banks, who is the owner and founder of Girls Auto Clinic, which is the car garage with lady technicians where you can get your hair done and your nails done while you get an oil change. In Philadelphia. Are you kidding me? Now, we're four friends, and we're all across the country in different areas, and we've met a couple of times at different conferences from time to time, and we're all friends, and we're starting to talk about what's happening on the phone, and we're like, we need something for us. There's programs and diversity programs for women, and there's women conferences, but it didn't speak to black women. And then we have diversity programs that are for black men and say, hey, we need to bring more black men in, we need to bring more men of color. But what happens when you're at the intersection between being a woman, being a black woman, and that our struggles and challenges were different? And so we started to talk about it, and we said, we need a network, we need an organization, we need a tribe that can speak to our concerns, where we can have conversations. You know, our mission is to connect women together. You know, we want to attract more talent. You know, we want to empower women to do better. We offer scholarship programs. We pay for women to come to conferences. I'd sit in the dealer word. I'm working 12 hours a day. I'm busting my butt. I had never heard of NADA. I had never heard of these things because we're so far on the totem pole. You just know that your dealership goes to a conference. You know, your owner is going to be out of town. So it was these women who brought my awareness up to things that I had never been exposed to, because they said, hey, Erikka, have you heard of NAMAD? Have you heard of these organizations that support, you know, people who want to be in the industry where they can get training and you can get cultivating? And I said, if I haven't heard it, how many other women out there haven't heard it? So that's what we did, is we created this organization to be able to connect these women together. We have a Facebook group. You know, we have sponsors. We now have people who are saying, let us be your dealership's ERG. Let us be your resource group so we can have the conversations that are uncomfortable, right? You need to have the conversations because they're having the conversations in your dealership whether you believe it or not. Now you have an organization where these women can come in and talk and feel a part of it and feel like their voices matter and know that on a bad day they can call. I call Amanda on a bad day and I say, girl, how many cars you got out? You know, I just want to be able to connect with her and be able to say, you relate to my struggle just like the guys do on the golf course. You know, it's the very same thing, but it's women who look like me. And that is exactly why we started WOCAN. And we're very proud that we just had our 2-year anniversary. And we're excited to see what the future holds.
Do you have some specific, some success stories that you would be able to talk about, you know, individual success stories?
Oh, absolutely. I think of Janae Andrews, and she sells 65 to 75 cars a month, right? She was a single mom. She's out of Indiana, and you know, we put this platform together every single month where we highlight women of color and we give them an opportunity to share their story. So we have over 500 members right now. So our members get to come in on a Zoom call right now, but we hope to have conferences in the future. But we have a Zoom call, and we have women of color tell their story to inspire other women who said, I didn't know you exist. So technology has allowed us an opportunity now to share those stories across a broad network. And social media has allowed us to bring more women together, women owners, women dealer principals, OEMs, women in the manufacturing, women technicians, and all tell those stories. And then that representation matters because you see someone that looks like you. And you say, you know what, if she can do it, I can do it. And when I'm having a hard time, we're putting mentorship programs together so that these women connect and create a sisterhood.
Sounds really rewarding.
It absolutely is. To have my girlfriends here is the biggest joy I could ever have, is to have faces in the audience that look like me, you know, clapping for me, cheering for me, saying, I am here for you. I am in your corner. You know, I am your tribe, right? You can't pay for that. You know, that is just such a rewarding thing, and that I knew that if I needed it, there had to be other women out there who wanted the same thing.
We have a question from the audience that would fit nicely here. The person asks, you have the ability to impact the industry on a larger level through WOCAN and a smaller level at your dealership. which is more fulfilling?
Is my GM in the audience? She is, and she supports it. She said, Erikka, take the week off and come up here and do what you need to do. Do what makes you happy and do what makes you passionate, because when you do that, then I can go back to the dealership and I'm my best self. If I don't get to fulfill the things that make me happy, the money doesn't matter. The money doesn't matter because I want to have an impact. And the impact is not just at the dealership, but it's the impact is at the people that I can touch and the people that I can reach. Because I still remember the 18-year-old girl who wanted to get in the industry, that had her GED, that nobody would be willing to give a chance. So every time I can give someone a chance, my heart gets full. Every time I sell a car to someone and I change their life, my heart gets full. And that you cannot pay me on a pay plan. So there has to be a balance between doing the things that you love and doing your work, and I don't think you should have to choose. I think that there is an ability to have a balance where you can do things that you're passionate about and still give 110% to your job. And I happen to work at a dealership that does that.
What should dealers be doing to promote hiring and retention of diverse staffs?
First, make sure your dealership is one that people want to work at. Making sure that you're putting faces in your leadership and executive management team that are diverse, right? People say, yes, I want to hire the best person. We all want to hire the best person. You got to think of it like inventory. You wouldn't go out and buy 15 of the exact same cars with the exact same trim level, right? Because if you did, then you'd only attract a certain buyer. Sure, you'd sell all 15 of those cars. But it's only when you start to say, I'm going to have a lower trim level and a higher trim level. I'm going to have a red car and a blue car. As you diversify your inventory, you're going to bring in customers and clients who say, hey, I wouldn't have bought a car from you had I not come to the dealership. Think about this time right now when we're looking at cars through a different lens, right? If you're a Highline dealer, for example, I worked at an Audi dealership, you may have passed on a $15,000 car a couple of years ago and sent it to auction, right? Because you're saying, I'm not going to keep this car. I'm sending this car to auction. The same car right now, you're like, absolutely not. I'm not going to, auction off this car. I'm going to keep it, put it through the shop. Let me get it cleaned up. Let me put it on the point. Because you look at the same car with a different lens because of the times. It's the demand, right? You get this high-end car that the typical smaller dealership said, listen, I'm not going to keep this BMW. It's too much. It's a $60,000 car. I'm going to send that off to a buy bid, get a buyer to buy it. Now you say, absolutely not. I'm going to keep this car because it's going to attract a different customer to my dealership that may have not chose to do business with me before. How long is that relationship going to last? Because that person said, hey, normally I wouldn't have come to this dealership, but you had a BMW that I like, so now I want to do business with you. And then he sends a friend, or he sends his daughter, or he talks about you, or he puts a social media page. You can't pay for that. So what we're not seeing is that there is a residual effect of the decisions that we make with the inventory that we have right now. So when you bring in inventory that's different, you bring in a different client base, right? We don't have the luxury to be selective right now, right? So we have to think about everything with that new lens. I want you to put that new lens when you think about people. I want you to put that new lens when you see talent and say, I want to see past the bias that I would have normally had. Should I keep it? Should I not? Should I hire them? Should I not? Allow other people to interview. Right? Give other people on your group and say, hey, listen, I don't want to make this decision on my own. I understand I have a bias, right? I'm going to be open and authentic to say, I want other people to interview candidates and say, do you see something that I didn't see? And then for the people that you have, if you're not taking care of the employees that you have right now, it's going to be very hard to bring people in because you're telling a story of how great it's going to be to work at your dealership. And the moment somebody comes in and works at your dealership, your employees are telling them a whole different story. So if you want to have congruency, then where they work has to match the people who are going to be attracted to come work there. So taking care of the employees that you already have, creating a culture and a climate where the employees that you bring in can thrive, not just survive. How can they thrive? And making sure that you're intentional about the talent, just like you're intentional about your inventory.
And there's a business case for that.
Absolutely, and the data's there, right? And a lot of people would prefer to talk about business case because it's money, right? It's not black, it's not white, it's green. And if you're looking at it from a money point of view, the data is out there that having a diverse team is going to bring you more money, just like diverse inventory, right? But then you may decide, well, there's a moral aspect of it too that just says it's the right thing to do. I look at Chick-fil-A, one of my favorite organizations. They make more money at Chick-fil-A and they're closed on Sunday than any other, fast food industry. And It may have been a moral decision in the beginning for him to say, hey, you know what, I'm a Christian and I believe I'm going to be closed on Sunday. But the franchisees do not have to agree with his moral decision to be able to say, I'm going to buy into it and be closed on Sunday. He said, I don't care if it's in the airport or in the mall, I'm going to make a decision to have my business closed on Sunday. So there was a moral responsibility. Everybody after that does not have to agree with that, but they still have to follow that, right? So when you think about diversity, there's two ways to look at it. The business case, the moral responsibility. Ultimately, we need both. If there's dealers who don't feel the empathetic part about hiring women or hiring people of color, no problem. But it makes money. And if I told you that you're losing 20, 30, 40% of your profits because you cannot be at the head of innovation, you would take it as a serious business case. If I told you that you were losing money for any other reason, it would be in the middle of your meeting Monday morning saying, what do we need to do to fix this? But it's the moral obligation that makes people start to feel uncomfortable. And so in my sense, I don't care which way. Say it's a business case, say it's a moral obligation. Ultimately, they're both going to go towards the same, path. Women were brought into the automotive industry because of World War II, right? They were forced to come in because all the men were at war. It wasn't like, oh, we just need more women to work in automotive and start working at these factories. There was a business case because money needed to be made, then work needed to be done. But yet that business case now fueled the women that are in this industry today. So again, if it ends up with the same result, to me, it doesn't matter how we get there. We just have to get there and row the boat together. So whatever side you're on, just understand that it needs to happen and it needs to happen now.
I want to finish and just touch back to a conversation we were having at the lunch table. And it speaks to representation and it speaks to work-life balance. But talk a little bit about your experience as a parent working in the auto industry and how it was different for your older daughter and now your youngest daughter.
So I have 3 kids. One's 20, one's about to be 15, and one just turned 3. My 20-year-old had a completely different experience with automotive because I kept her away from it. As a working mom, I believe that if people knew that my kids were a part of my life, that I would be looked at differently. That if I was late, they would say, oh, it's because of her kids. If I needed to take the day off, oh, it's because she has those kids. And I saw it as a weakness. So I was very afraid to put my kids on the front line. In fact, I hid them. I missed graduations. I missed birthday parties. I didn't ever want it to be a factor. This time around, when I had my daughter Joy, I said, not this time. This time I'm going to bring her. I'm going to put her front and center. I want her to know that she has a place in this industry. I want her to know what it looks like to come to work. I have the blessing of having a general manager that allows our kids to come to work when needed, right? There's a time and place for everything. But one of these things she said is that your kid will always have a place here because you have a place here. And you don't have to separate the two. So being able to take care of your family is a fundamental right. It's just something that you want to do. And to think that you have to choose every day between doing what you love for your family and loving your family is a hard choice. Why do I have to give up giving my family 100% of me to come to work? Why can't I understand that there's a balance and that when I have the balance at work, I'm giving the best part of myself to my kids as well? So now Joy sees me at work. She understands that I work at a dealership just at 3 years old. And it gives me a sense of joy to know that she can see herself in the place that I'm in right now and know that there's a future for her there too.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you again to Erikka for joining us this afternoon. We're going to take a